Hello, my loves. Thank you so much for returning back to the Temple of Venus. I am your hostess, Gwendolyn here, and today we're going to talk about shadow work and darker makeup. Um, this really resonated with me this week because I feel like in my own therapeutic experience, I've had a couple of really amazing breakthroughs, and those breakthroughs have led me to a degree of compassion that I thought I would never have and recognize that other people are still on a different journey than me and may not have that degree of compassion. And so I wanted to talk about the importance of doing shadow work and going back into yourself and understanding deeper who you are as a god. Because when you finally enter into goddesshood, when you finally reach a point where you are satisfied with yourself, your nervous system starts to feel better. You start to feel like you're capable. You release certain energy, um, and so I hope that in this I can help you begin or continue your journey through your shadow work. And as human beings, we're always going to be working towards something. We're always going to be working towards being our better self and questioning who we are until the day we die. So I think that when people think about shadow work, they think that it's a form of darkness. But shadow work is actually the part of yourself that you've abandoned. The shadow self sometimes can be perceived as evil, but it's not evil. It is the rejected child, the wounded child, the emotional self that has been hidden beneath adulthood, the part of you that that we present to people, and the people that make us, when we have like a response to something and we can't respond the way that we really want to, and we force that someplace else, that manifests into other ways and into other things. That doesn't just go away. That sensation is still in your body. Your adult reactions are often unconscious child wounds. Most people are not consciously living, they're reacting from an emotional programming that started through your child. Your shadow does not disappear because you ignore it. It simply begins to control your life from the unconscious. So, what is the shadow? Now, you have your regular self that you present, your goddess self that you present to the world. And then you have the side of you that when they go home and the lights are off, who that person is, or when the doors have closed, who are you at that time? Because that becomes self. If you are in a space where you're come home and you're depressed and you have anxiety, there needs to be some shadow work done around that, because what will happen is if you don't address it, it will turn itself into negative behavior patterns. It will turn itself into addictions. It will turn itself into poor behaviors that like you yourself aren't happy about. So your shadow self contains rejected emotions, your hidden desires, and one really big thing that it really holds is shame. You might feel rage or jealousy, grief, vulnerability, and fear. And sometimes, most times, society makes us feel bad for having those experiences. I think society leaves room for grief, but it depends on like the type of grief that it is, right? Society doesn't room for the experience of somebody feeling jealous. Like, there are some women who might want to have children, and so they have people around them who are having children, and so there might be some jealousy that's around there. And as the person who is experiencing as the person who is experiencing the jealousy from the friend, you might feel like, oh my god, like my friend is jealous of me, so I have to remove myself. And if the person who is jealous, as the person who might be projecting the jealousy, if you don't sit down and like really analyze your for yourself and reparent that side of you that might not be able to have that child. Now this is just an extreme example, But it's to say that, like, we all have something deep down inside that we are trying to fix and we're trying to manifest. And I think that the thought of like a parent coming up is because I think it was on my TikTok feed. But society teaches us what emotions are acceptable, what we're allowed to experience. And so we begin to have this split self. So, as women, I think as a society, we're taught to suppress our anger, our emotional needs, our ambition, our desire for attention, and our sensitivity. The shadow is created when authenticity becomes unsafe. So, what do we do? We create a mask. We have a performance self. We have the acceptable version that we send to work, that we interact with our friends. And then, and I think this happens also when we read the news and we find that, like, you know, I don't know, like somebody is doing something that they shouldn't have because they were an upright citizen, and so we're so surprised by that. But if that person never addressed some childhood wounds, then it can manifest into a lot of different things. Um, so the social mask is only for us to be able to go to work and exist. And sometimes it can come across as like never asking for help, being hyper independent, emotionally guarded, being a productive person, or being obsessed with like approval. Some women take on the role of caretaker even though they shouldn't. Many goddesses are not living their authentic lives, they're performing for survival. And so, how the shadow shows up in our lives as adults now, as you're listening to this, the shadow appears through things like emotional trigger. And if we don't address the child that is having that emotional trigger, if we don't address what the baseline of that is, then it can destroy our life, then become self sabotage. Self sabotage is actually just your inner child trying to get your attention. It's your inner child looking to be cared for, looking to be listened to, looking to be um, given an opportunity to share themselves. Or you could, end up in toxic relationships, toxic friendships, and you don't know why. You could have like a severe fear of abandonment, but why it does that fear of abandonment exist? So then you have to go back to your childhood and ask yourself, why do I still attract this type of relationship? Why do I still have these type of friendships? What is going on with me that I need to reflect and make sure that I'm not the one that's out here trying to people please? um, Sometimes you're not reacting to the present, you're reacting to an old wound that might be touched. Unlike, so until you make the conscious decision to be aware of your unconscious mind, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So your wounded child carries emotions of abandonment, rejection, shame, and neglect. And when the wounded child that's still in you is triggered, how it shows up in adulthood is anxiety, codependency, and emotional hypervigilance. The wounded child might avoid responsibility, um, or making commitments, and how that works in adulthood is it turns into escapism, fantasy addiction, and impulsivity. Your divine child, this is the part of you that gets happy when you are experiencing something from your childhood and it feels nostalgic, represents your creativity, your intuition, your spirituality, and your authentic self. Buried beneath the wounded child is the divine child. So that is why when you're in therapeutic spaces, they tell you art, find avenues to express this anger or to make yourself to fall in love with something, whether it's music, art, any type of creative path, because what you're doing is you're addressing your creative child. You're bringing them to the forefront, and they have control now more than the wounded child. So shadow work hurts because it destroys an illusion. It exposes survival patterns. It reveals emotional truth, and it forces confrontation. Most people would rather protect the mask than face the wound. And I've seen this in some of my, like, I have a friend that recently is uh, getting a divorce, and I can see it in like her husband, who doesn't want to go to therapy or work on the marriage. He just wants it to get better, and it can't get better without both of them working together to help it get better. So he has to face his childhood trauma. He doesn't want to. He just wants it to work out by himself because he's an adult now. So when your achievement becomes your self-worth, is a way that like shadow work can feel painful. You become hyper independence because that came from um, neglect. A way to help yourself heal is you're going to reparent yourself. So you have to build the emotional safety within yourself. And this is where I am in my journey. I have been working on reparenting myself, and it is so hard because my wounded child wants to react. My wounded child wants to behave in a certain way, and I cannot let that happen. I have to love myself enough, be in a space where I give myself the love that, my parents should have given me, and move forward with my life in certain areas and say, you know what, I love me enough to take myself to the gym consistently. I love me enough to make sure that all my doctor's appointments are on time and scheduled well. I love me enough to dress my body in a way that makes me feel good about myself. Reparenting is you saying to your wounded child in the active state, I see you. You're allowed to feel what you feel. Don't need to earn love. And I am. You need to be able to tell your child. And so, some things that you could do, um, I tend to use two things. I do mirror work, and I use ChatGPT because I think I need that like communication dynamic. And I think you doing mirror work helps me because I have to look at myself and make sure that I am aware of the fact that I love myself and see myself for who I am. And if you start journaling, you should start journaling and ask yourself, what are your triggers? And as you're living life, you will notice that you'll be triggered by things. But if you can stop at a moment and say, I'm triggered by this, but where does that come from? That to me, when I started doing that, that's when I knew. I was like, oh, I'm healing. That's the healing part. The awareness in that moment in time is the healing. What emotions are you suppressing? Or what part of yourself makes you feel unsafe? And I think sometimes if you just ask questions, the things that come up for you will be your own truth, because the answers are deep down inside. Also, developing and making sure that you're protecting, being aware of what those are. Now, I want to also, healing is not not a perfect linear. There will be times where you back. There'll be times where you fall down and have to stand up. So I pray that you give yourself. And also, when I think once you do give yourself that grace, once you fall and get back up and you sit in that awareness, you start to see that even the people that you were mad at before or upset with, you start to see that wow, they're how sad for them. that they're still going through that problem and they don't know how to address it. Now, I want to end by saying the healed woman is not the woman with the darkness. She is the woman no longer ruled by her unconscious, by her inner child. She is the woman now ruled by her reparented self, the that self that understands that she herself is the temple. She herself is the Venusian, and that she is always be. Your shadow self is not your enemies. Perhaps it was the. Thank you so much for listening to me and being with me during this time of healing as we talk about our inner dynamic, our inner self. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, hope you see you on the next video.